Oh yeah, right. Another episode on the Westminster project, and not had a very good afternoon really. Bit of a disappointment, and my fault really. It obviously proves that you need to be 100% sure that you're buying the right parts, or buying the right parts for the right reason to fix the problem. I don't know if you remember in a previous episode a while ago. I was having issues with the starter motor, and I'm not sure if I did a video on it or not. What was happening was, when I was trying to bolt the unit together and putting the cases on either end with the armature inside, when I was tightening up the screws that go all the way through that hold all the pieces together, when it was getting to the last point of where the screws were actually going to go tight, the armature wouldn't turn. It would actually bite up and would not turn at all. As soon as you took the screws off a half turn, then the armature would spin nice and freely. Now, I, obviously not having all the machinery here, lathe or anything like that, or any means of sort of dialing things up to see if things are straight or not running true, assumed that the original armature, looking at the bush, in this case, in the end case, because obviously I've changed this bush, and obviously by changing the bush, obviously the tolerances are a bit tighter. I think this is where it started from. Now that obviously there's obviously a lot of meat in here, when everything started pinching back up again, it's gone tight. And you can tell in the old bush that on one side of the bush there seems to be a lot more material removed than the other. So there's actually like a nice big groove running around it. So I assumed, because of the damage in the bush, that this was running out of true. And I thought it was running out of true because when I came to strip this off of the engine, the starter motor was actually loose. It wasn't tight, and I'm just thinking that maybe because it wasn't tight, the starter's moving about every time you start the engine, or when the car was being used, and it was putting maybe more pressure on the armature than need be. It was slightly running out of true, and it was possibly damaging it and bending it. Unfortunately, I was wrong. I got this armature, which is a new old stock armature, which has actually come all the way from New South Wales in Australia, believe it or not, and fitted this armature, this nice brand new unused armature from probably 1965 or whenever it was, and it doesn't solve the problem. When I pinch the bolts up again, it's exactly the same as the old armature. It locks. So it's not a bad thing, because obviously what I'd like to do is I'm still going to put this starter motor together. I mean, by now I could have bought another one and this will be all sorted, but I would prefer to recycle. This armature is going to spend its entire life in its box and never do anything, so at least we're going to use it. It gets used, we know it's good, it's brand new, so we're alright with that. So it's a bit disappointing. I didn't probably need to buy it, but anyway, we're going to end up with a brand new starter motor. And also what I will have to do is I'll have to fit another set of brushes. But these are going to be a bit fiddly because they don't just screw in or rivet in or anything like that. You've actually got to solder these to the body. I'm hoping that obviously my shovel soldering iron will be man enough to do it. So that's that. So we will do that. So what I'm thinking is, and looking at it, I know it's not the most accurate way of measuring things. I've actually tried to use my digital vernier and measure from this window here to here, and I've put a black mark pretty much where the screws are. And if you do that and then measure that side, there's actually a definite at least 0.4 or maybe half a millimetre. There's actually a difference side to side. And I'm thinking that when I'm obviously bolting this up, because this isn't true this end, it's pulling the casing to one side, and that's causing it to pinch on the bush. So there's plenty of forward and back movement, slack in the armature to allow this to be machined down a tiny bit. What we'll do is, I'm not going to do it today because that's held me up, and I've had to do gardening and whatnot with the wife today. So, because obviously we're coming into spring and the garden's a bloody mess, so we've had to go through all that stuff. So I didn't get much time out here today, so that's all did. So what we can look at is the other job I'm going to do, which I'll do tomorrow. Is we've got this little box of bits and pieces. I think I spoke to you last week about doing it, we're going to put the piston rings on the pistons and get the pistons on the conrods, get them all nice and clean, get them oiled up, get them bagged, and I'll probably put them in the house to my wife's dismay, but I'll put them in the office, because obviously in here I'm struggling. I've got to get a new roof put on this garage this year because it does get a little bit damp in here at this time of year and things start to rust. Obviously when you degrease things, if you leave them degreased, especially engine components, it doesn't take long for them to start getting a little bit rusty. So they'll end up being cleaned up and being put in the house. So again, well not again, I don't profess to be an engine builder, because I'm not. Everything I've done is just how I've learned in the past. I've only really built maybe 2 other engines in my entire life, so I just know what I know. If anyone knows that I'm wrong, please tell me, because I'm just trying to, if anyone for anyone who has absolutely no idea and wants to do a classic car and is really unsure, at least I can show you a little bit of what what I know, or think I know anyway. So what we got is obviously our pistons and rings. So there are 6 pistons in this box, hopefully you can see that. I don't know where they came from. I know that the piston rings are American, but the pistons might be Indian. I'm not sure, or they could be American. I don't know. Oh no, they're American. No, they're made in the USA. Oh, I'm wrong. So these are American pistons. So there's a piston. You can see that it's in a bag. I'm trying not to touch things too much because hands aren't exactly clean. But there's a piston. You can see that in there. Okay. Pop that in there, and then you get this. I'm not sure how many rings there were on previous engines I've done, but I always think that there was either 4 or 3 piston rings at the top of the piston. I can't really remember, but these are a bit different. These actually have 5 piston rings, which is a little bit strange. And they all come in this bag, and they're all numbered. So you can see that it's upside down probably, but the bag says 1, 2, 3, and then you've got on this bag you've got 4 and 5. So there's an order in how they need to be fitted. It was just what I wanted to add to it. So I'm a novice, and if I'm getting things wrong, obviously please say, because I'm learning as I go. But this is just what I know and what I've been taught and tried to do in the past. So with your piston, if you ever got you've just got a restoration project and you don't know the engine doesn't run, or you don't know the general state of the engine, if it's ever been rebuilt or anything like that, there are actually ways to tell. Your tops of your pistons, and I may be wrong with this, because sometimes they might just be blank if they're standard, or sometimes they might have STD or something like that. If it has something like STD, well, I say it might even be blank. It could be that the engine is standard and it's never actually been machined or rebored or anything like that. These pistons are marked, and they're marked because they are. I'll just give my hand a bit of a clean up. Brake cleaner's good for that. Not saying you should do that, but it's a quick way of getting your hands clean so you can touch stuff. So if you look at your piston, just make sure it doesn't slide out. That, by the way, if you don't know, if you have no idea, that's called a gudgeon pin. That one, and that goes into the little end, which is obviously at the top of the conrod. If you didn't know that, that's teaching mum how to suck eggs. But for people who didn't know, so at the top of the piston, on this one, there's 2 bits of information. So you've got plus 30 there. I hope you can see that. That actually says. That there says plus 30, which means that the size of the bore has been increased by 30 thousandths of an inch. That means it's been remachined. It's also got front, which normally means that faces the front of the engine, and generally the front of the engine is number 1 piston is obviously where the alternator and the water pump and the radiator is. It's all that end of the engine. But sometimes piston 1 can be gearbox end. It depends on the engine. But normally, where this engine is concerned, front is the front of the car. It's number 1 piston, so this faces front. And a number could be 010, 020, 030, 040, 50, 60, depending on the block. It means it's been machined. If there's nothing on it, it doesn't necessarily mean it isn't. but it's more than likely that they're the standard pistons in there. But so there's normally a number, and sometimes it says plus, or or it just has the 0 and whatever number it is. So that's that. So that means you could tell if your engine had been possibly machined. The only issue with knowing if you find an engine has been machined, you need to obviously know the limitations of your block and how much more can be machined out of it. It might be you strip the engine down, it was rebuilt, whenever in the engine's history, and that it may need no machining at all. It may just need a honing through the bores, and then that's it. But if it's been run a lot since it's rebuilt and got a lot of miles on it, and it's obviously the bore needs redoing again, then you need to know what the limits of your block is, because there's only so much material in the block to make it feasible. Some blocks like this C-series engine, I think you can actually, if the block, if you go beyond the point of actually the limits of what can be rebored, they can be sleeved. They can actually the blocks can be machined out, and I think the sleeves can be put in. Not saying that's the same with every engine block you get. Some blocks get to a point they're probably scrap, and that's the end of it. So of course then you've got to weigh up the pros and cons of whether the engine's rebuildable, and if it's not, it's just probably worth just getting another engine. Obviously it's just going to depend on the value and the rarity of the engine, and whether you can get another one and all that kind of thing. So also on your bearings, you can get information from your bearings as well. These are main shells. These are the big ones that the actual crank sits in. The con rods don't sit in these. This is what the crank runs in. These are called main bearing shells, white metal shells. And on the back of these, that says 010. And you probably can't see that, but there's 010. Just like the top of the pistons, 0 and it's a 10. That means that the crank's been ground and 10,000ths of an inch has been taken off of the crank. And again, with cranks, I guess depending on your engine, there's a limit of how many times that the crank can be ground, because obviously you're taking material away from a crank, and a crank's taking a lot of pressure. There's not enough material there. Eventually the crank could probably break. So there's a limit they put in to how much can be turned off before it's scrap. So you need to know that. And they don't always have to be turned off the same. I think what I've seen on some cranks, sometimes you get the big ends maybe plus 10 and the mains might be plus 20. It just depends on how much damage was done to the crank, obviously in its lifetime, when things obviously failed. And I'll show you. I didn't think I'd kept this, but I did. And I'll show you what these look like. If no one's ever seen a knackered bearing before, how bad they get. So that's a new bearing. So underneath this white metal there's copper, and that's essentially what the main part of this is, copper underneath here, but it's got a white metal top. So when you start seeing the copper like that, you can just see that. Yeah, that means, I mean, you can't really see. Yeah, that's copper. That means you've got a rule. That's a problem. I don't know whether this engine would have actually started knocking by this point. I don't know, but that's pretty bad. That's all the white metal has gone. Okay, right, I'm out in the garage again, and it's Sunday, so what I'm going to do is actually what I have done already, is I've managed to get the piston rings onto 5 of the pistons, and I thought I'd leave the last one just to show you how I did it. If I can just aim that down there, hopefully you can see that. I'm a little bit tight on space, so you won't have to look at my ugly mug while we're doing it. So this is how I did it. I'm not saying this is the way that you should do it, it's just the way I managed to do it. Again, I always say this at the beginning of videos, I'm not an engine builder and I will not profess to be, so obviously people out there find their own way of doing it. This is the way I've managed to do it. So like I said, all the other 5 pistons are already done. Got a piston. Before you install the rings, before I installed the rings, I basically cleaned this piston up before. Although it's brand new, it doesn't mean to say that there isn't any debris in there. And I found that when I've been cleaning these, there is actually small amounts of swarf and things do come out of these. They're not clean, so you do have to make sure they're clean before fitting the rings or fitting the pistons into the engine generally, because you don't want bits and pieces, bits of metal flying around in your engine. So like I said yesterday, the piston rings come in a pack. The pistons, they're all numbered. You can probably just see that there's 1, 2 and 3, and then over here I've got 4 and 5. The order you're supposed to do it in is number 5 is done first, and number 5 goes into the bottom slot here, and it's essentially, I guess, an oil scraper ring of some kind, and that's number 5. So number 5 doesn't have any indication of top, so it doesn't matter which way around it goes. And I've checked the instructions and it says it does not matter. There's no difference in steps or grooves or anything in the ring that suggests it needs to go a way up, and it states it doesn't matter. So what I've been doing, I mean, it's not easy to see because I can't focus on this camera. This ring is you can't move it very much, and it makes it quite a tight fit around the piston. So what I have found is, obviously, first of all, I cleaned it before fitting it. What I have found is you have to kind of you can't really walk this ring down, the piston ring down the piston without potentially putting some nice big scratches or grooves down the side where these 2 points of the piston ring will be tight. Now, what I have found, and to do it, to alleviate that from happening when I'm walking the piston ring down the side of the piston, is if we oil it first, just a normal regular engine oil. I just oiled it a little bit, making sure my fingers are clean, just so it's not dry. So you take the ring, and it doesn't matter which way round it faces you. What I found is if you take this side of the ring here, with opposite to the gap in the piston ring, you hook it over, and you basically just open it up a little bit and just get it started. So it's just started on there. And then what I found is if you take your feeler gauge like that, there's a small gap there, just get it started and push it towards the gap in the piston ring, he says. That's it, and just get it weaked over. So that what you end up with, he says, is, I'll just show you that, how I've done it, is you get the feeler gauge underneath the end of the ring, and then what you do with the other one, same thing, put it underneath through the piston ring like that. I'm not sure if you can see this, but hopefully you can. Just open up the piston ring a little bit, get it round, and then again just get it so it's just the piston, so at least the feeler gauges are actually underneath the piston ring ends, because they're quite sharp and obviously the material is quite hard. So then with that you can then just nice and gently just walk it down while it's sliding over the feeler gauges. Just walk it gently, nice and gently. Nice and gently, there's no need to force anything, and then it should go snap in a second. Not literally snap, but just when it finds the slot or the groove in the piston. There we go. And then you can just take these out. So that means now we've just managed to walk it down the piston without putting any nasty scratches up and down here. So that's our number 5 ring. And then what we have to do is we have the piston the other way up, so it's the top's facing the ceiling. And what I've chosen to do is to use front as a datum, because this has got front stamped in it. So this is the front of the piston. So put the front down on there, and this number 4 ring comprises of 3 pieces. It's got these, which are called rails apparently, and these are made of steel, so these do take a little bit of bending. You don't want to bend them too much, but they'll take more bending than a piston ring will take. If you bend them as much as these can, you probably you'll shatter a piston ring, but these can bend quite a lot. So they're called rails, and it doesn't state what this is called in the instructions, but again, something to do with prevent oil pumping, it says on the instructions, but I've not seen piston rings like this one before. And in between those two rails, this part of the piston ring is sandwiched, and it's got a colour code on there that's, hopefully you can see that, it's green and red. Now in the instructions it doesn't tell you which way round those colours are. It just says that the coloured, if I just read it here, install clean oil ring grooves with gap directly above wrist pin hole, ends of expanding spacer, which obviously that is, to be butted with 2 different colours visible. That's all it states. So just using, I guess, a little bit of logic, you've got green and red there. Red is port and it's normally left, so what I've done is I've basically used the front of the piston as a data, so I've got left and right from top, and I'm going to put the red to the left. So all you do, take the ring, you can open it up quite a lot, not too much, just enough, put it over the piston and then get it into that number 4 groove so it looks like that. I don't know if you can see the colours, but you probably can't. So it looks like that. There we go. So that's that. Then what you need to do is take, it doesn't matter which one, these aren't, these have no top or bottom. They go either way. It's just a steel ring, or rail they call it, to make sure it's clean. The reason I've been cleaning stuff is because I'm not sure what the lubricant they use on these is, or if it's a kind of wax or anything like that. So I've decided to clean it off, only because if it's sticky in any way, and it could cause the ring to stick in, possibly stick in the groove on the piston. Probably not, but it's just, I would rather things were clean. At least you know if you start off with things clean, you're on a winner. So put a little bit of oil on it, drown it. That's what I've been doing. And what you have to do, you install the top ring or rail first, but what it wants is the gap in the rail has to be, you have one gap has to be this side, and the other gap for the other rail, it has to be over this side. Okay, so doing to the front, getting it situated and then feeding it round. Like you say, you can bend these quite a bit, and then once you've got it so it's pretty much in the top position, you're left with your piston ring just, I'm sure you can see that, like that. Also, it's hard to tell. You've got your gap. Oh, it's because it's handed the other way. I'm just confusing myself. You've got this gap here. The gap in the ring is sticking over the piston. The only thing is, if you try and force this or walk it down the piston, you end up putting a nice big scratch down it. So again, using your feeler gauges, you just get it over the end, get it near the edge, and then you can basically walk it down, so like that, so you're stopping that from making a nice big scratch. Not that it probably matters if you made a tiny scratch, but I don't want to make one, so I'm going to use it. And you just pull it out of the way. Try to do this, and it should just snap in there, which it didn't. But there you go. So that's now inside. That's the top ring. You can just about see that. You can see the gap in it. So revolve it like that. Okay. So you start it the other way. Again, just making sure things are clean. Always make sure stuff is clean. A little bit of oil. And just wipe it around like that. And again, you've got your datum. You've got front, so you know the gap needs to be this side. And you can start it off. Just going. We're nearly there. Oh, there we go. We are nearly there. It's just gone over by itself. And hopefully they are quite sharp, so there we go, bang. Good. So that one's in. So the top rail gap is this side where my thumb is, and the other gap is there. It says they should be approximately 1 inch to 2 inches away from where the gudgeon pin goes in. That's where the rail gap should be. So that's that in. That's that done. Right, and the easy ones are actually the top 3, and they're quite slack, so they fit really easily. So again, they're in order, 1, 2, 3. Take 3 first, because 3 is going in the bottom groove there. It does have a way round, and it says top, which you probably can't quite see, but there's a tiny word that says top. There's a tiny little mark. It says TOP, and there is a difference. The bottom side of the piston ring is actually flat. If you look at the top side, on the inside there's a small, roughly 45-degree chamfer going around all the way around the inside of the ring. I won't profess to know why that's there, but obviously they do have a way around, and that's the way it needs to go. So these have already been cleaned. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on it. And you don't need the feeler gauges for these, because these are quite easy to open up. But again, don't pull them too far. If you're pulling them too far, you will break them. You could shatter them. So making sure we've got our word top at the top. Again, like with the bottom one, just get it started. Just open it up a little bit. Get the ring, part of the ring closest to you, sat in the groove. Make sure it's in line with the groove, that the split end is in line with the groove, and then just let it go. And it doesn't really snap back in on these top ones. It's quite a loose fit, so these are quite easy to do. Not like the bottom one. And then you take number 2. Again, it's already been cleaned. A little bit of oil. Go around the ring like that. Always making sure your hands are clean too. You should really have, your hands shouldn't be dry if you're doing stuff that involves engine components, because the acids in your fingers can actually create corrosion. So as long as your hands are clean and you've pre-lubed your fingertips, when you're handling stuff, it shouldn't really make a difference. You just have to be very careful that when you touch other things, you're not, because obviously oil was sticky, you're not incorporating debris to your fingers. So just occasionally just have a quick look and just make sure your fingers are clean as you're doing anything. Because that's the only thing I'd say. I've professed I'm not an engine builder at all, but I know one thing that you do have to make sure is everything is clean, and as clean as possible. Because when you first start that engine up, and if there's any crap in your engine, that's the first thing that's going to go into it, and that'll be the, could be potentially be the end of it. So yeah, so that's number 2. Number 1. They actually look identical. There isn't a great deal of I can't see any difference between these piston rings at all. I haven't tried miking them up or anything, or measuring them, but they look exactly the same. They all have the chamfered step on the back. Again, word top at the top. And put it over, back half of the closed end of the ring facing you. Just get it into the top, into the groove. Slightly, and there it goes, and it just snaps over. And then what you end up with is your rings in place. I've got a Royal Scrub ring. Oh yeah, these coloured things, apparently they're not supposed to overlap. If they start to overlap, there's an issue. They should just butt together, which they do. They just literally just rub together like that. And that's it, all together. And that's how I got the pistons ring to fit. There might be people could do it in other ways, I don't know, but basically I got them fitted without damaging the piston or the rings, which is the most important thing. Just to show you why you have to be careful. You're probably not going to see this very well, but like I said to you about cleaning things, I really doubt you're going to see it, and you're probably not. No, you're not going to see that. In there is lots of little reflective pieces of aluminium, and this is basically where I haven't actually put the pistons in this. I've been spraying the pistons over this tray, and you can actually see tiny. There's one there. I doubt you're not going to see that, but there is a. Yeah, you're not going to see that, but you might do. There's a tiny little dot you can see on the end of my finger. Now that's a piece of swarf, and you don't really want that in your engine, and there's quite a lot of them, and it's just obviously production swarf from when they make the pistons. So any component really needs to be cleaned, unless obviously specified not to, but they do need to be cleaned. Don't assume because it's new that it's okay or clean, because it's not. Right, so there we go. So that's it for me this weekend. and hopefully next weekend I'll get another video out to you. Okay, take care, bye now.